Everyone and their mom at this point has heard of or played GTA 5. And if you pay any attention to more recent games, you might have heard of a little game called Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 that released this past year. Now you might be wondering what the hell these two games have in common. They both have airplanes. Duh. For the purposes of this video, I'll be looking at and comparing the differences and similarities of flying in these games, for the most part. Yes, I know they are extremely different games, and one is technically a simulator, but they both have airplanes, so let's get into it. GTA 5 released back in 2013. I remember staying up late at my friend's house who had just got it for Xbox 360, and we were trying to see how long we could hold out in the strip club from the cops. It never got old. We really spent a ridiculous amount of time doing this. But once I was able to afford my own super duper gaming machine, I bought GTA 5 and began to explore the world and story that Rockstar had crafted for all us wannabe asshole criminals. Definitely spent way more time in the online mode than the story, just doing random stuff, testing the game's limits, that sort of thing. As much fun as I had blowing shit up and causing absolute mayhem around Los Santos, the thing I had the most fun with was flying. And I'm not talking about the dumb flying motorcycle crap that's in GTA Online now or anything. That stuff's stupid, you know? I'm talking about real ass airplanes and helicopters and shit. I got pretty good at it too. Some of my friends couldn't go 30 seconds without crashing into the ground or a bridge or something, but not me. You already know I was doing loops, inverted flight, and all that crazy crap. Fast forward to 2020 with the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator, Microsoft's latest flight sim entry that's more realistic and beautiful than most other sims on the market today. Being a bit of an aviation enthusiast, you might say, I was pretty excited to pick this game up shortly after release and find my house, of course. That's what everybody wanted to do when this game came out, find their freaking house. And I found my house and it looked like a pile of dog shit, just like every other house in the sim that wasn't photographed or whatever. So once I got over my disappointment of how my house looked in the simulator, I actually tried out the flying. It was pretty hard. Even for somebody who knows how to fly airplanes, it was pretty hard. Like, using a controller or a flight stick just didn't feel natural and took a bit of time to get used to. But once I got the hang of how the sim worked, it wasn't long before I started to channel my inner GTA 5 stunt pilot. Which brings me to flight training. One thing these games both have in common are their flight training tutorials for people new to flying. Microsoft Flight Simulators is definitely way more in depth than GTA 5's, but they both cater to the type of game they are. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, you're learning about all the little buttons and dials and all that stuff in the cockpit, what airspeed you should be flying at, how to properly land an airplane. Because it's a flight sim, the main idea is to complete flights from point A to B like you would in real life. You know, pretending to be a real pilot and all that. Well, in GTA, you have this hardened-ass Air Force veteran dude screaming at you to land with an engine on fire, go do an outside loop, fly in formation doing some crazy-ass stunts. Because it's GTA 5, and rules don't mean shit. So you're most likely just going to be doing whatever the hell you want. Like, what the hell is airspace? I ain't never heard of that. This is my airspace now, bitch. Now, this is not to say you can't fly like a psychopath in Microsoft Flight Simulator, or complete a realistic flight from LSIA to Sandy Shores Airfield in GTA 5. You totally can, and I've done both plenty of times. What's great about both of these games is that they give the player a lot of freedom of choice. You can pretty much go where you want to go and get there how you want to get there. There's a lot of freedom when it comes to that. Which brings me to realism. Okay, this is a pretty obvious one. Microsoft Flight Simulator is way more realistic than GTA 5 in regards to aircraft simulation. Microsoft Flight Simulator lets you change your weight and balance, go get fuel, turn on the airplane like you would in real life, and in general has one of the most realistic physics models for flying of any game I've ever seen. In GTA, it's more like hop in and go. We don't need airspeed where we're going. Like, when you're taking off in Microsoft Flight Simulator, or in real life, you have to actually keep an eye on your pitch angle, your rate of climb, and so forth. In GTA 5, there's a little bit of that, but for the most part, you can pitch straight up the second you get airborne and turn into a goddamn rocket ship. Now, it is possible to stall in GTA 5, but you really have to try and stall the plane. It's not something that you typically have to worry about. Also, there's this little thing called overstressing the airframe in aviation, which it's basically when you go faster than the airplane can handle. You know, like your wings would rip off and stuff. And you're in a nosedive and you're getting close to that, so all of a sudden you try to pull up, but you pull up too hard. Well, there goes your wings. GTA 5, as you can imagine, does not care about such things, and Microsoft Flight Simulator does. But all that happens when you overstress the airplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator is you crash. You just get a black screen that says you overstressed the airplane. Which is, it's kind of lame. Like, it would be so much more realistic and cool if the wings broke off or something from overstressing. But we're about to talk more about this with damage. For damage, it's kind of the opposite of realism. GTA 5 does a much better job at portraying damage and failures than Microsoft Flight Simulator does. I mean, it's not even really a competition. If you've ever played, you probably know that GTA 5 has some pretty impressive damage models for vehicles, including planes. For example, as I stole a private jet from LSIA, the cops shot out my left engine. It caught fire and ultimately failed, forcing me to have to land again. Or here's another one. Maybe you had a little too much adult juice before hopping into this 172 and thought it'd be a good idea to try and land on an uphill street. Well, yes you did, and no it wasn't. Now you're exploded and that poor 172 is in pieces and on fire.
You goddamn animal.
Unfortunately, all Microsoft Flight Simulator does is this black screen thing when you crash or overstress the airplane. No damage or dents when you hit something. Not even a fire when you set an actual engine fire failure. Like, okay, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, there's all these failures that you can toggle on and off. Like oil pressure, hydraulics failure, engine fire. And so I was like, okay, maybe I judged the game too harshly because I'd never tried that before. Like, I know you can't dent the airplane and stuff, but maybe if I turn on the engine fire failure scenario, the engine will actually catch on fire. So I was getting pretty excited until all that happened was a sad little puff of smoke out the back of the engine. And before you say anything, I know the main point of the game is to fly, not crash. It's a simulator, I know. But when they add something like failures to the game, like the fact that I can turn on engine fire failure, and it doesn't have fire? What the heck, man? Like, I expect a little bit of fire when my engine's on fire. Is that too much to ask for? Where's the showmanship? In all seriousness, though, my best guess as to why damage and fire isn't a thing in Microsoft Flight Simulator is probably because of the already super complex physics engine at work. I mean, maybe they tried to add damage, but their computers were the one catching fire afterwards. Like, honestly, I'd believe that. But yeah, damage in GTA 5, pretty good. Damage in Microsoft Flight Simulator, pretty bad. Honestly, just non-existent. So the last thing on my list of topics to talk about here is visuals. I mean, you already know we had to talk about the graphics with these games. And the truth of the matter is, both of these games have absolutely beautiful graphics. You have GTA 5, an 8-year-old game that still holds up and competes with modern-day video games. And then there's Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which is staking its claim as the next Crysis with its breathtaking views and hardware-intensive software. Seriously, I bought Microsoft Flight Simulator on PC and could barely run it with my graphics card on low graphics settings. I mean, I have a R9 290, so that's probably part of the reason, but it's still worth a shot, I guess. Come to think of it, my graphics card is about the same age as GTA 5, so there's that. Thankfully, Microsoft Flight Simulator runs much better on the new Xbox. Now, I know the visuals may not have much to do with actual flying, but I still think it's worth mentioning. From my experience, GTA seems to have better world detail on a smaller scale. You know, when you're flying down low and you can see people walking around and dingus drivers doing their thing all around Los Santos, it's pretty well represented. There's a lot of detail there. But when flying at a higher altitude, at least in comparison to Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can notice more of the world's imperfections. The map in GTA 5 is awesome, but at higher altitudes you can notice more pop-in, lower texture resolution, things like that relating to terrain. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's kind of the direct opposite. It doesn't really look great at ground level. In fact, it looks terrible at ground level unless you're at a custom designed airport, like the big ones. Buildings and houses are mostly copy paste, and they look bad. They look bad. I can't even defend it. But from higher altitudes, the world is absolutely stunning. Pretty much from 1,000 feet above ground level all the way up, the world looks great. But once again, both these games are playing to their strengths here and make for some awesome flight experiences nonetheless. So I guess my point is that both of these games have airplanes. Each game does some things better than the other. But at the end of the day, they're both fun as hell to fly around in and are a pretty decent representation of aviation for the type of games they are. Thanks for watching this far. If you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking, subscribing, whatever you want to do. Let me know if you like this type of content, if I should make more. But yeah, thanks for watching.